All right, welcome everybody. Building lightning fast MACH POCs. My name is Sonja Keerl, and I have with me a fantastic panel of 4 wonderful gentlemen. If you guys all dare to come off camera, I'd love to introduce you real quick. I have with me Eli Finkelshteyn, founder and CEO of Constructor. Hi, Eli. And thank you for being here. I've got Will Robinson, Head of Customer Success at Uniform. Hi, Will.
Everyone.
Pascal Lagarde, who is the SVP Commerce at Valtech and also a fellow board member at the MACH Alliance. Hey, Pascal.
Hi, Sonja. Hi, everyone.
And last but certainly not least, Matt Bradbeer, MACH business lead at EPAM and also a fellow MACH Alliance co-founder. Hey, Matt.
Hey everybody.
All right, we're going to discuss today MACH POCs, or POCs as we call it in Europe. Why should you do them? How do you do it successfully? How do you ideate? How do you scope? And what can you expect? And I'm really happy that we have 3 concrete examples of POCs that we're going to show you throughout the course of this panel. But what is a POC? So it's a proof of concept. And without going into too much nitty-gritty definition here, the intention is that you have a short sample project, maybe an integration or an application, and you want to prove the feasibility. Does this actually work? And you want to demonstrate the functionality of a given technology. Typically that has a limited time frame, but it does have more goals than demonstrating the technical feasibility. It is really great for you to identify gaps between the vendor marketing and the reality of a product. You can experience the actual relationship with a vendor. And it also allows you, especially in cross-functional teams, to get everybody on board whilst you evaluate and buy a new tool. You can prove a business case, and that case can be based on speed or it can be based on revenue metrics. And we'll talk a little bit in detail about that. And it really is a fantastic tool if you think you can do something and you need to excite other stakeholders within your organization to showcase, to show and prove, actually, this is possible. Now, what are the 3 proof of concepts that this team here has built that we want to share our learnings with? We've had an augmented reality web app. This was a proof of concept that was turned around from let's do this to live in under 4 weeks. And we're going to hear all about the ups and downs of that experience. It was really designed to show something that everybody thinks to be really high level and far away from possible is doable in a great way, in a fast way. Then we were looking at a content and commerce experience proof of concept designed to show how bringing together content and merchandising without having to replace a core e-commerce transactional engine can really help up-level the end customer experience in a quick way. Less than 2 months this took us. And lastly, omni-channel personalization in a little less than 12 weeks. A great proof of concept for a project, a concept also, personalization that many of us have tried over the course of the last 10, 15 years. And let's be honest, many of us have failed because the old way of doing personalization was a little off, and there's new ways of doing it now. So in order to showcase internally, it is now possible to do it right. You may need to get a few people with scars and burn marks from 10 years ago onto your side. How we did that, what we learned, we're going to share. Let's start in the middle of those 3. Let's talk a little about content and commerce, a proof of concept with Constructor.io and Contentstack, with the intention to show if you want to create composable commerce, if you want to create an agile experience for your end customers, be they consumers or other businesses, you can create an experience layer that does not require you to rip and replace your core e-commerce engine. there is a way to do an AI first product discovery and a really great deep product experience just with a content management system and a fantastic search and merchandising tool. Eli, can you help us understand a little bit what your motivation was for joining this proof of concept? And I'd love to hear how this helps to understand the value of such a project.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the unique things about Constructor is, we were started by engineers. We weren't started by sales folks or marketers. And the thing that we're really good at, and that a lot of the folks in MACH are really good at, is the actual tech. And so what we realized early on in the company is we were never going to win on marketing. Sales was something that we were learning, but one thing that we could really win on is if we could get people in front of the tech. And as we were doing this, we were starting to realize that proof of concepts, especially with other MACH companies, were going to be a really good way of showing and figuring this out. And here we actually have a sample of a proof schedule. This is what we usually recommend for our customers as we start talking to them. And there are a few things that we really want to touch upon here, and I'll explain how this ties into the proof of concept that we built with Contentstack in a moment. But we want the person that is using us to start using us as soon as possible with their actual data. And we want to show a few things with that data. So the first one is we want to be able to do a site and opportunity analysis for them so they can see where the holes are with their current product discovery. One of the beautiful things about product discovery and about content that doesn't exist everywhere is that they both hit really close to the business metrics that really matter to the company, to the retailer itself. So, you do an A/B test with these things, you can actually see lift to revenue. You can see lift to profit. You can see lift to conversions. And the question that a lot of folks ask is, how does this happen? And that's where the proof schedule really comes in. So the site and opportunity analysis, what it can do on the search side, for example, on the product discovery side, is it can show, hey, these are the places where things are falling down right now that you might not even know about. We had a recent proof schedule that we did just as an example where somebody, this was a shoe website that sold shoes among other things. And one of their top searches was Jordan 1s. If anybody is in the sneaker community, they've probably heard of this. But the thing is, they would search for it with Jordan and then the number 1 and then an S afterwards. And the search system that they had previously, they weren't able to figure out that a 1 with an S afterwards was pluralizing it. I guess like that number 1 threw it off. And so this is one of their top searches that they were doing, and they were getting no results for it. And I guess some merchandisers had come in and had put in some like not great results. And this is something that people didn't realize. And so this is one of the
only you coming in and doing the proof actually showed a gap that the organization wasn't aware of?
Exactly. That's exactly right. So it was actually being able to show this to them with their own data, not just talking in, hey, Constructor is going to be great, and we're going to have this black box AI, and we promise as soon as you put it in, it's going to be wonderful. But being able to actually show them on their own data, this is where the miss is happening. And the other part of this, and this is a little bit more of where the content side comes in. So content in a very similar way, it really hits close to home on top of that revenue. One of the things that a lot of people don't realize is as you pair these two things, you get to escape the traditional grid system that exists within search. And again, you're going to be able to see that actual impact on your revenue. And that's where the POC comes in. This is where you get to be able to show this stuff very quickly. To Sonja's point, you get to feel the relationship with us. You get to feel the relationship with Contentstack or whoever you're using for the content side. And at the end of this, you really get to see the amount of lift that we're giving you together, what working with us is like. And one of the most beautiful parts of it is if you do this right, you get to fund the rest of your digital transformation with it. You now know how much you're making off of that combination of search, product discovery, and content. And that can help you fund the more technical sides, the e-commerce platform, and all the other things that go along with it.
So, Ellie, if I understood that correctly, part of every conversation with an enterprise prospect for you is, before you buy, let's do a proof of concept. Is that right?
That's exactly right.
And can you give us some examples of what values your customers are seeing in that? How long is that proof phase?
So for us, it's typically 4 weeks. When we did the content plus commerce POC with Contentstack, it was 8 weeks. And together, the value that you'll see out of it is you get to see, first of all, where you're missing. You get to see what we get to align on what the business value is going to be to you, and we get to make sure together that we're actually going to hit that business value for you. And then at the end of it, one of the key differences for Constructor, for example, is you get to see the glass box of how it works inside. You get to see not just, hey, this is the amount of money that we're going to be able to help you make, but here's actually how it's working inside. This is how the algorithms are working, and that's why it's going to happen for you that way.
Mm-hmm. But then, given that this is a commerce case, you can see the directional, the direct revenue uplift as well, can't you?
Exactly. That's exactly right.
That is fantastic. I can imagine that makes conversations a lot easier for future business cases.
Thank you.
Is that something to the other gentleman that you see too in proof of concepts, that it helps you prove value right away and helps an organization to continue making a business case for something?
Pascal. Yeah, absolutely.
Pascal, go ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's especially if you're, moving into new territory for a company, then, nobody wants to, I don't know what the right English expression is, bet the house or something like that, without, having a feeling of whether you're going down into the right direction. And proof of concepts are a great way to validate choices and to test hypotheses and get internal stakeholder buy-in.
Yeah, thank you. And that's an interesting point. I think Ellie's example was very much when there was already a project and the question was, which tool do we choose that serves us best as part of an evaluation? Pascal, we'll look in a second how you can also use a proof of concept just to kickstart a project and get people excited. Matt, I think you wanted to add something too.
Yeah, I think it's really important where maybe if you're going to do, and we'll talk about this later on, if it's something that you're potentially going to throw away, or you want to test that concept out as opposed to build something for the future, that you are almost doing a thought experiment, but in the real world, as opposed to just in your head, and you're doing something that's real that you can play with. I think that's very important. The key to it is sometimes sorting out what it is that you want to achieve. And sometimes you can get that through proof of concept, and you find there are things that you can do that you didn't think you could do. So it's very effective for that sort of thing.
Yeah, fantastic. And talking of you don't quite know what you want to achieve, let's look at the second proof of concept that we want to share with you today, which is Project Spyglass. So Project Spyglass is a proof of concept that Valtech did to prove it is possible in 4 weeks, under 4 weeks, to create an augmented reality app with Contentstack. And Pascal, allow me again to apologize to you and the entire Valtech team for Varia in my brief that we gave you initially. This is actually the very meeting notes. You can see the objective was to create a cool demo of content in a VR or AR environment. Before we hear from Pascal how they suffered through this brief, let's look at what the team actually created. And this is a very exciting moment for me personally, because I do need to reshare. And I hope you can all see the video.
Contentstack partnered with Valtech to make a web-based augmented reality proof of concept in 4 weeks. Our small team focused on retail skincare products and particularly educating users at 3 points in a product's lifecycle. First, can we layer information in the store that will help a person decide what kind of skincare serum to add to their routine? Here we're showing personalized information about how the product fits your particular skincare goals, as well as reviews, potential allergens, or contraindications with other products. You can navigate this information by swiping on your phone screen, and you can look across several products in a display and decide which one you're interested in without needing to touch the bottles themselves. All of this is built to run completely within a web browser without the need to install an app, using standard HTML and CSS along with popular open source frameworks A-Frame and ARJS. And when you've found a serum you like, you can admire its qualities, check to see if there are any allergies you might have to it, before adding it and moving on to the next product in your routine. Second, when you arrive home, you can hold the bottle up to your phone camera to learn how to use it. Using the bottle as a controller and rotating it reveals what the benefits of the ingredients are, as well as clear usage steps. This data doesn't have to be text, it could be video or detailed images. The phone camera is tracking custom fiducial markers, which are contained within the large black boxes on the label. After you've been using the product for a while, we can introduce additional interactions, such as tilt rotations for a customer to leave a review. We can expand upon the content that is shown with personalized recommendations based on our knowledge of your skincare goals, as well as local information, such as the UV index. All of the product information shown is backed by Contentstack's headless content management system and served to our web app with GraphQL. There's a lot more that we'd love to explore and refine here. By its nature, a proof of concept is a tool for starting a conversation. We developed Project Spyglass in the open on GitHub. You can read about our process on Contentstack's blog, or find out more and try it yourself at spyglass.valtech.engineering.
Pascal,
Yeah,
5 words, do something cool. And I
Exactly.
can imagine that's a conversation that happens in a lot of like marketing teams or maybe even boardrooms, like, oh, we need to do something cool with VR or AR. How do you help companies ideate to something like this in 4 weeks?
Yeah, it's a great question. And on one hand, obviously it was one of the more wacky briefs from the last year that we had. At the same time, I think it was a great brief in the sense that you guys had a fairly clear idea that you wanted to what you wanted to accomplish with the proof of concept, and I think we together had we wanted to show that headless content, truly has value in other kinds of experiences than we typically are accustomed to when on the web or on mobile apps or those kind of things. So obviously we wanted to use Contentstack. We, as you said, we settled on using AR as a mechanism. But also because that was relevant in the time of COVID and people not wanting to go into stores and don't want to touch products, but do want additional information and those kind of things. And we wanted to make sure that it's a web app so that it's really accessible, that it doesn't require you to install anything. But we didn't know at all for, what kind of concept we wanted to build, for who to target with it, why we would do it, what the user journey should be, that they should be supported, etc. And we didn't know from a technical perspective what to use other than Contentstack, but we had no idea what frameworks to use or how to create anything. So we really did start from scratch. And that indeed,
How did you do that?
That first part was ideating around what will be a cool industry to focus on, how to find something that's kind of content rich, that people can relate to, that is fun to build around and to showcase, to whoever wants to see it, etc. And I think, obviously we want to deliver something at the end of those 4 weeks. But at the same time, we also wanted to make sure that it was a fun experience for everybody involved in the project.
How long did this ideation phase itself take you?
So that was basically the first week of the 4 weeks. So we did a couple of brainstorms in that first week, and by the end of the week, we had the idea. We could convey it to some of the stakeholders that we needed to get buy-in from, and it was very simple. And we have some great people on the team that are very good at visualizing stuff, as you can see here on the lower right-hand side. We have these tools like Miro that allow us to ideate and to brainstorm remotely, which also really speeds up the whole process, I think, because while you ideate, you're also capturing all the ideas already in a format that is shareable, etc. So yeah, it was pretty smooth. And then indeed the overall process was. So the first week was really about finalizing the concept and getting the buy-in from everybody. And then we went into 3 sprints where we obviously in iterations built a solution, rethought some of the decisions that we had made and those kind of things. And we started blogging about it, as was already said in the video. This was developed out in the open. We didn't make an after movie. We were shooting the movie and sharing the movie as we were building the product, which was a great experience for everybody. And
scary, let's face it.
Yeah, because we didn't know whether we would succeed. And I think that's one of the key aspects also of doing a proof of concept, is that this is to validate something, and the validation may be that it doesn't work, or that it doesn't have value, or you went down the wrong route. So fortunately, that was not the case for Project Spyglass. It was very successful. But I think it's the whole motto of fail often, fail fast. That's also that should be part of the mindset of everybody involved in a proof of concept. That you can fail, and then you've learned something.
Yeah. So I'd love to get all the gentlemen to chime in here. What are common pitfalls at this stage? And put yourself into the classic situation. Someone like Barry and Sonja have a crazy idea, come to you with 5 letters. Now you got to make something out of it. Matt, I'll start with you.
So for me, it's always having a really clear idea of what questions we're trying to answer. It's a proof of concept, so they don't have to be too clear, but when you're going through that, not changing or moving the goalposts as you're going along, because that will turn the proof of concept into a full-blown project. And I've seen that so many times. So you've got to stay focused on what it is that you're trying to prove or not prove.
Ellie and Will, thank you, Matt. Ellie and Will, from the vendor side, how do you see this ideation derail?
So for us, it's similar to what Matt said, but it's having a really clear idea of what success means, and we always encourage people to put it in metrics.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that, and this is more search specific, but I think it applies to others as well, is you talk to different people at a retailer, and these places are not monoliths. Like, everybody has different ideas. And so when you start on a POC, maybe not everybody at that company has spoken together. And what one person thinks is success might be about results just looking more relevant. One other person thinks might be success is about revenue going up a certain amount. Another person might be talking about profit. And if you don't build this with everybody together with this very, very clear idea of what success is, you can hit one person's idea of success, but not the company's idea of success. And then at the end of the day, you've wasted a lot of people's time. So to us, it's really, really, really defining what success is, and then making sure the POC hits it or it doesn't if you learn something.
Do you make different stakeholders sign off on that too?
We want to get, we won't make people like sign a contract or something like that.
I'm German, I like that.
But no, it's actually not a bad idea. Like, verbally, we really, really, really want everybody to be on board with this as much as possible, to get as many of the stakeholders that are going to be involved as possible, and to say, this is what success means. If we can hit this, then we're happy.
Great. That makes a lot of sense. Will, I think you wanted to add something from the personalization side.
Yeah, I was just going to say to make sure that there's a good understanding of what's next. So like Matt said, what's going to happen during the POC, obviously from my side is customer success, taking it through. It's a continuous process of developing and learning, and you're not going to answer everything all the time, but you need to take those questions and say, okay, let's park that, let's think about that later. And then you can keep cycling that kind of that learning process through as far as you can take it, really. Like it should never really stop.
Yeah, that makes sense. If I may add a personal note, if you in the audience are looking to make a proof of concept just to try out a crazy idea, take this as a reference that yes, you can create a shitty brief, and yes, you can expect from your partner to turn this into into magic, because apparently it is possible. Do not let people send you back and say you need to nail it all to the latest one again.
I mean, only really good agencies can take a shit brief like that and make it really good, can't they?
There you go. Thank you, Matt. And that was great to come from a competitor, but it's a great next step to talk about our last example. So Project Q was or is a proof of concept jointly developed by EPAM, Uniform, and Contentstack to talk about personalization. And as I said before, haven't we all tried personalization? And haven't we, many of us, failed in the last 10, 12 years trying to do so? Personalization has evolved insanely, I think, in the last, 2-3 years, really, with a new way of technology, with the cloud, with atomic content on our end. And what I find myself in conversations with organizations, especially marketing executives who were there 10 years ago when we tried for the first time, is, boy, is there a lot of skepticism that what we are promising now actually works. Q, Matt, if you want to help us understand the scope a little bit, was set out to do just that, address the skeptics in the field. What did you guys do?
So this is very much a planning is everything. So we had a lot of crazy, wacky ideas about what we could do. The idea really was, how could you tie together a whole series of experiences based on activities that you were doing, were turning up to a conference is where we ended up. So we spent maybe 3 or 4 hour long meetings working out exactly what it is that we were trying to achieve, something that we could focus in on, and something that wasn't going to sort of blow apart and turn into a massive, great big project. Keep it tidy. Very much sort of, how would you use the one piece of ubiquitous technology, which is your mobile phone, to really I guess augment your experience of turning up to this event, this made-up event in Las Vegas, of going around this conference, looking at QR codes, looking at different things that you could scan with your phone or look up on your phone, and it gradually builds this picture and a personalized picture of what it is you're interested in, and then starting to suggest what you should be doing next, what sort of events you should go to in the evenings. And then I think the really important bit for us was that what next bit, which was, okay, you've been to the conference, you've got all this information that's been picked up on you around your activities. How does that then translate into day to day after you've come back from the conference? How can you follow up on that? So it's very much, it's been built, and I think we're near the end of the process now, but it's become a really interesting, focused, but potentially like a startup idea in itself. And I think that was really sort of testament to the people that we had involved, but the thinking that has gone on, not just before in terms of making sure the scope was manageable, but keeping that focus and keeping it our feet on the ground, but making things that were really sort of wow moments, seeing if we could introduce those in without blowing the brief apart.
Tell us a little more about how you managed to go from all the wacky ideas into a defined scope, because a proof of concept should be a certain time frame, right? Is it easy that it kind of like scope creep?
So with this, it was easy because I think there were a lot of people that had done this before, and they understood the idea of having owners and I think some of the points earlier on, I think one of the important things is that you have a sense of ownership, and it was very clear that very quickly they developed maybe 2 or 3 product owners, and that really sort of took ownership about what it was that we were trying to achieve, put down some ground rules, and kept everybody in line, including me, because I tend to go off on tangents. So it's that sort of somebody with a sense of purpose. You need a school teacher that can keep people in line, and for me that's a product owner. That's not sort of a project manager or an analyst or anything like that. A business analyst. This is a proper sort of somebody who can keep everybody in line. And I think
isn't that like a party pooper in a time when you want to get people really
in my
excited?
head, yeah, normally. But I think with the mix of people that we had from the 3 companies involved, the owners were fun people, so they weren't going to boot the party too much. We kept celebrating.
Gentlemen, if you want to come back, I'd love to throw this out to everybody. When the actual idea is on the table and it's around the good old scoping and the execution, what pitfalls do you see? Pascal, let me start with you.
Sure. I mean, I'm a big believer of iterations, and I think so. One of the big pitfalls would be to, in your first iteration, try to cover everything in the kitchen sink, rather than, truly taking small steps and small bites and building on that and learning and pivoting and etc. So, yeah. I think for any project, and especially in a highly condensed proof of concept, you have to realize that you're taking small steps and be happy with every step that you take and everything that you prove.
It's interesting because I think, Ailey, it speaks to what you said earlier. Think about the outcome rather than what you need to do exactly to get there. Is that sometimes maybe difficult to get sponsors to agree if you don't have a defined scope?
It's difficult, and one of the things that you actually brought up earlier in this meeting that I think or in this webinar that I think is pretty interesting for this is there are a lot of soft metrics that go into that success as well. And if you over focus on the hard metrics, then you might be missing some of that. Like you brought up relationship, and that's incredibly important. Like, is this somebody that you actually want to work with? Like, of course, the hard metrics are important. Of course, you want them to raise your revenue, you want them to raise your profit, whatever it is. But also, like, is this somebody that you want to spend a whole bunch of time with? And having that as part of the definition of success and making sure that you're not missing those soft metrics, I think is incredibly important to making sure that it's not just a valuable POC, but it's a start to a valuable relationship and a valuable partnership.
Yeah, that's a really good point, especially if you have multiple parties involved, right? How do they work together too? Well, a proof of concept, is that like an MVP? Is that something you build upon? Do you throw it away?
It's a leading question, isn't it?
It is.
There are many ways of seeing it. I think that for me, a POC is distinct from MVP, but they're born out of the same idea. What do we need to know? It's all about learning some new information. And
actually, Will,
yeah,
we just threw this term out there. Let's actually explain. MVP stands for minimum viable product, and it essentially means it's the first real thing you can use out there. Sorry, I just thought that would be
no, that's fine. My definition of that is to spend the least amount of effort learning the most you can from it. So that is kind of maybe more of a technical definition of an MVP over POC, which means that you should be thinking about it with certain quality standards in mind, because you are going to take this to production. A POC, you could decide we're just going to bootstrap it really quickly, get it off the ground and get it going. But you can take POCs to production and then work with that technical debt and build on that over time. I'm sure others have other perspectives, either in agreement or not.
I'd love to hear them. Debate, gentlemen. Who wants to throw POCs away?
Yeah, so I coming from, I think it depends. I've got a real thing about throwing stuff away, because I think if you get it, partly because I think of my background coming from a startup sphere and being in the .com boom where we had no money and we were making up as we go along. Everything was a proof of concept because they were just concept. They didn't exist before. And I got very much used to that. And then I remember coming out of that sort of .com startup era, going into some really big old school traditional retailers that were doing .com, and they would have, here's a demo. Now this is a proof of concept. Now this is a test, and then this is a MVP, and then this is an MLP, and they would really stretch it out, and they'd be throwing stuff away. They'd spend months doing something, and then they would chuck it away, and it's lots of waste of money in my mind. But I don't know. I find it very difficult, the throwaway piece of it. I don't think I'm the.
How have you found other teams taking over existing POCs though? Because that's often what I deal with brand new customers who go, "Oh, this other team did a POC. We're not going to touch that." And there's this kind of pride thing of them wanting to build it again from scratch because it's theirs.
They do. I've had that where the technology's changed. So I can remember working for someone that built loads of POCs and they were using .NET, and then everything they ditched .NET and they'd moved on to something else, and the .NET wasn't the thing anymore. So you have that, and so you've got this thing that's sort of sat there on some server somewhere, not doing anything, and actually it's probably quite fit for purpose, but they don't read it. They throw it away and go again. But from a business angle, from the business users, and I always used to work on the business side of things as opposed to technology, the concept had been proved because the business thing, like, yeah, it worked. Okay, let's just build it better with better and newer technologies. That sort of makes sense because you're future proofing. But I think that's what's changed now, but we'll get onto that in a minute. I know there are different views.
Eli was nodding heavily when you said, don't throw things away. Well, what is your perspective, Eli?
I mean, Matt, it sounds like you and I come from similar backgrounds. We were also a startup for a long, not so much anymore, but for a long time we were a startup. And this isn't true everywhere. So first of all, I'd say like it depends, and there are going to be some cases where it would just take so much time to build something the right way that it does make sense to throw it away. But at least in our case, the places where in the early days we figured out that we needed to throw something away, it was because of something that we should have done that we didn't do in terms of communication. I think Will's example is a really, really good example. These teams should have been talking at the beginning, right? If they had been talking, then you wouldn't need to throw the thing away. The reason that you're throwing the thing away is that they weren't talking. And that's, to me, like that's part of when you're speaking to enterprise vendors, and I think everybody in this room is, like, that's part of our jobs. It's to make sure that all of these teams are talking. It's to make sure that this thing is, you're not just building good tech, but you're building good tech while connecting people in the right way and getting it to the point where this is the start to a beautiful relationship and a beautiful product, and not just something that you throw out and then you start over afterwards.
Interesting. I love how that has changed. In all openness, I did my first proof of concept 20 years ago in a dark server room of a Swiss bank, and it was a proof of concept that lasted 8 weeks, and everything was thrown away back then. And it's great to see how technology. Oh, did you too, Pascal?
No, but I think you should throw things away. Absolutely.
Okay, give us a different perspective.
Well, for two reasons. First of all, if a team knows that they can throw it away, they allow themselves to not bring in all the complexity that they would bring in to a project if they know they are going to have to live with it for another 3 years or something like that. From very functional stuff like, I don't know, multi-currency or multi-language or responsive or all those kind of things, all sorts of maybe security or other sorts of requirements that you will bring into a thing that you want to scale. But also from a functional perspective, for me, a proof of concept is really to prove some of the technical or functional complexities that you're worried about while not caring about all the other stuff. And another thing, and that's I think where we are today in a much better place to do those proof of concepts, is that actually, especially cloud-based or MACH solutions allow us to do these proof of concepts really quickly without, investing a lot in setting up infrastructures and doing all sorts of complex stuff, but actually taking the MACH building blocks, putting them together and show to somebody that it works. In that sense, I think the spyglass example, for instance, is a it's a good way to do a proof of concept. You could throw it away, and everybody would be fine with that. Obviously, we like talking about it and showcasing it, but the investment in essence was really low. It was low enough for you to allow to throw it away, and I think that modern technology actually allows you to do that, where in the past setting up a proof of concept environment and infrastructure and all sorts of things, then
it's the first week on.
And the investment becomes so big that indeed from a financial perspective it doesn't make sense to throw it away, and you would really have to carry that forward going into scale up.
That is a good point.
That's a really good point.
Because one of the things one of the things that used to kill it was that people would be so focused on this one thing, they keep it a very closed proof of concept, so it actually couldn't be reused in any way, because you'd narrow the scope down. But I think that what's changed now is because the technologies are so consistent and open, especially in the Mac context, that you can build something and keep it open as you're going along. So you're right, you can throw bits away because it's quicker now with all the automation that we've got and all of the CI/CD stuff that's going on. We've changed our ways of working in which we produce these things. So actually you can throw bits away, but at the same time, I'd still come from the other angle. Because you can keep it that open, you don't need to switch it off if you don't going to use it. So you're not throwing it away, it's still there. Whereas when it was all on a proper server sat under somebody's desk, you can use that server space.
It was gone.
Else. It was gone. Whereas now it doesn't matter, because you can just chuck it in the cloud and you just switch it off, and then you might need it later on. But if you build it with that open philosophy, you don't have to throw it away. And I think that's the antidote, and you get a happy medium.
I'd love to touch on something. You tend to. You all four inside comments mentioned something interesting. So we've talked about the importance of proving value to make the case. We've talked about just proving crazy ideas are possible. But proof of concept, I heard you say, also help the business side of the house next to the technical feasibility to understand how to change processes. And will, I think, especially in this personalization proof of concept, helping marketers understand how do you need to set up personalization in such a way that it works in the modern world was a critical element of that proof of concept, wasn't it? Can you help us understand a little bit what learnings are?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's also, if we take one step back and look at what Pascal was saying around Mac technology being able to let us do these POCs, it almost becomes essential that we do, because conceptualizing all of these building blocks, all of these composable elements of your stack are so difficult. And we don't want to look at architecture diagrams. They don't prove anything. And we don't want to look at UML. Who knows UML these days? Who knows all this stuff? And you need to see it. And even like wireframes aren't going to show you personalized content. Wireframes are just going to show you a mock-up of something, and prototyping isn't quite there yet. So, and the number of variations of stacks that you can now build is incredible, right? Like just across the three tech vendors here, we have however many different variations if we drop one out of the puzzle, right? And we don't have that flash demo that all the suites have just to roll out every time. So we need to prove it, and we want to as well, because we also want to show how easy it is to use our technology. And the business users shouldn't be expected to spend, years getting a degree to learn to be able to conceptualize and think forward to understand that. And so with personalization in particular, like we think it's table stakes, right? We think everybody should be doing personalization, because we understand that if you do it properly, it can genuinely drive, good new business and get people using content in the right way and using your app, your product, your service, commerce platform, whatever it is, for what they're intending to do. And Uniform thinks about this as intents, right? And you try and explain this to somebody and you say, here's an intent that this user has. And we know, because we're saying, well, they're going to buy something. And so we're going to show them stuff that's directing them towards the things they're going to buy. And that makes a lot of sense. But you say that to a marketer and they go, well, I want my segment. I want my group of people that I've set up a rules engine behind to define and
sliders
and then we say, but just imagine that you'll be in Contentstack editing your content, and we'll you'll be then in uniform setting up your intents, and it'll all work magically, and it's just not going to work to explain it. And so in this case, seeing is believing. And I think we're all in agreement, whether you're going to throw the POC away or not, that you're going to be iterating on some solution over time. And we're now in this position where we can even prototype in code, which is amazing. And with API-based services as well, you can hook that straight into things like Figma design tools and start seeing what this looks like in a really meaningful way. That has a really low barrier of entry for all these business users. They can just see it immediately. They get on board. And also what's the one thing I'll say about not throwing it away is at least store a version of it to remind you what you did. So even if you're going to say, you know, we're going to rebuild it from scratch, have it there to look at it and remind you what you did prove and how it did, where you came from, I guess, is what I'd say.
That makes sense. Did you find that in the proof of concepts that you run, that it enabled the business users to, and I'm leading you, I'm sorry, but did it help them to understand how to set their org up or their processes up differently to be successful with your technology too? Is there a confidence, best practices element to it too?
Yeah, it was something I was thinking earlier as well. There's a point at which you need to make sure that the right people are involved in the POC, and that they are the right people who are going to learn in the right way and understand how to take things forward. Because we're in this paradigm shift with a lot of our customers are just coming to the table with like popping their head out and going, oh, what's this headless stuff that's going on around here? And it's a big paradigm shift for them because they've got these roles in their organization and they start from a point of fear and they are not confident in any new solution at all. What they are confident in is their existing tech that they're running on-prem, that they've been running for the last 20 years. They're happy with that. And so we need to prove that and build that confidence over time. And it starts with a POC. If I work with a customer and they haven't done a POC, and they'll come to me and someone on my team will come and go, oh, they're scared. They don't know what to do. And we start treating it like a bit of a therapy. Okay, what are you going to learn? And we have to build that confidence again from scratch and get them to the point where they can see it and get them excited about it. I think confidence is a baseline, excitement and, you know, genuine joy in what they're going to be able to produce. And it takes dealing with them as an entire organization. This is what this POC will do for your big enterprise, but also you as an individual. Your role isn't defunct anymore, Mr. Java developer or Miss .NET developer, right? Like these things still exist for you, and you can take this and learn from it and build it. And that's having a POC, a tangible POC to look at and discuss, makes that conversation a lot easier than me just saying, don't worry, your job's safe, because who am I to say that to anybody?
Especially if we're trying to sell something, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Absolutely. This makes a lot of sense. Is that, gentlemen, is that something you see too next to technical feasibility, confidence, knowing what to do next as a key learning?
Yeah, I think so. We actually did a POC together with you guys in the Netherlands for a company that's evaluating a new content management solution, where they had very kind of tactical things that they wanted proven in the proof of concept, and we allowed them to show them how their current siloed approach would be kind of going away once they move to a solution that is much more a centralized content approach, and then having all the different touch points that they already have tapping into that, rather than the real siloed approach that they currently have, where every touch point has its own content solution, its own personalization approach, etc. And that really opened up their eyes, that they, from an internal teams perspective and from a go-to-market perspective, would become less siloed, because the technology would allow them to work together and get the same benefits from developing that. And obviously that brings along opportunities. It also brings along an organizational transformation for these teams, because it's a fairly large organization. So they have to think about what that will look like, what that organization will look like, how they will manage that, how they will prioritize development of that core commerce solution and content solution. So yeah, it's opening up eyes from opportunity, but also for okay, so what does it mean for the organization?
Yeah, interesting. Sometimes a little frustrating too. I'm sure you've articulated that in many sessions on slides before. People don't believe it until they see it, right?
Okay.
Ellie, do you have examples from a value creation where before you did the proof of concept, the people didn't believe you, and then afterwards it all made sense?
Yeah, and I also love how it connects to something that both Pascal and Will were saying, that there's really, it feels like there's really three things that make a POC successful, at least to me. So the first one is, you're solving an actual problem. The second one is you've got metrics that you can point to, and you can say this is what success was. And the third one, and I love how they were phrasing it, it's opening up new opportunities.
Mhm.
Right? So like you hit these first two, but then that's not it. It's also showing all these new things that are now possible because you did this. Like with searches as an example, like you hit those first two, and then maybe now BOPIS is easier, right? Maybe now you can go and you can do buy online, pick up in store, and so your search is not just something that's like one big monolith, but it's specific to each one of your different sites. And now maybe like different things are possible with content. Maybe beforehand you had just this like very, very static search grid, and now because you've got this new product discovery platform, you now have access to this like very, very beautiful magazine like UI. And all these things, it's ideally not just your ideas as the vendor. I mean, you should be secondary. You're there as a partner, as a helper. These should be ideas that the business, that the retailers you're working with is getting excited about and looking at this and saying, hey, I can use this. This thing was a success already, but I can use this for all of these crazy new things that are going to make it an even bigger success. And that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, love it. Will, do you have a concrete example?
I don't really. I think that there's so many, they all kind of merge into one at the end of the day. You've got this kind of mass of POC. Yeah.
Do you do one regularly as well? Because you have all the skepticism attitudes in the room.
We do. I think that we often, to be honest, what we've built allows us just to show a good demo that acts as a POC, and we show the inner workings of it. And I think that's like, as a tech vendor, that's gold, right? Because we don't have to spend time getting them to build it themselves. But also we're trying to get our customers to do their own POCs, to learn themselves. We guide them through it. We help them set their, proof points, their criteria, what they're trying to achieve from it. And we try and keep them to that scope. It's often hard, but we want them to go and do it. We don't want to tell them. We don't want to be this pure educator in this process. They need to buy in and be committed to the process. Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. Matt, like Pascal, you help a lot of organizations get their POC straight. Do you have an example for perception changing?
Yeah, and actually what's interesting about this one is it's not one that I was directly involved in, but it really helped sort of, I guess, consolidate the strategy that we were talking to this client about. And actually it's a shared client that me and Pascal have. The client didn't believe that these 4 MACH vendors could work together that easily, and the business teams were like, no, do you know what, we're just going to bring in some other big company that says they can do it all out of the box. We don't believe it's that simple. We don't believe that you connect with each other. We don't get this API first lark at all. So the 4 vendors just went off, and in, I think it was a week and a half, 2 weeks, built a proof of concept of all 4 of their technologies working together, slapped it in front of the client and said, here you go, this proves the strategy that Matt's been talking about, and we think we can do this. And the client just said, right, that's it, tick, done. And it was really, really good. And the client, the client picked up on that and said, okay, so that's really proved the strategy. And actually the business teams won over because they saw it happening. And I've seen this running a business unit myself, where I've had non-technical people in my marketing teams and my operations teams, and to see a proof of concept like that brings something that is normally in a black box to them as technology. I don't understand it, to the reality of, look, you can push this button and things happen. It was brilliant, absolutely perfect.
Thank you. Hey, thank you all for taking the time today, share your experience on the concrete POCs with Contentstack, sharing your experience with doing POCs for many, many, many years. Thank you for taking time in the audience. I think the bottom line is, now that MACH is around, you don't need to trust marketing slides anymore. You have the possibility in no time to create proof of concepts, to prove value, understand if it's technically possible, excite people inside your organization, and learn for what you need to build going forward. Thank you, everybody. I wish you a fantastic rest of the MACH Alliance Festival. And if you have any questions, these gentlemen are here for you to help. Thank you all. Bye-bye.